Chapter 491. Ethan calmed down and asked, "My sister isn't the culprit." Ethan thought his relationship with Olivia might be less strained if that was the case. "I didn't say that. I asked my father about Jodie a few days ago. She wasn't just a simple victim." Olivia explained the entire incident with Jodie in detail. Ethan frowned and began to recall abnormalities that happened on that night. He had invited Byron and the others out. Something came up, so Byron couldn't make it. There were a few wealthy heirs at the party. Ethan didn't like the atmosphere and came up with an excuse to leave. He felt his body burning up when he left, which made him realize he had been drugged. He had Brent look into it, but too many people were present, so the incident went unresolved. Ethan was surprised to learn that the incident was related to Jodie. "That's right, you were Jodie's target. She had sex with an unknown man after you left and had the baby. My father found her after that, and she was pregnant. She claimed to want an abortion and start anew with my father. But she kept the baby until she was 3 months pregnant. I suspect she kept the baby as a bargaining chip with my father. We've always thought Jodie was a victim in this incident, but we neglected her nature. She was very ambitious and would do anything to get ahead. I'll look into it. Your sister might know more about it." Olivia reminded him, "I'm not trying to help clear your sister's name. I just want to uncover the truth. I know that, Liv." "All right, I've said what I needed to. I'll be going now." Ethan grabbed her hand and said, "Liv, it took me a long time to prepare this." Ethan didn't want her to leave, but Olivia looked at him indifferently and said, "I have no interest in playing games with you, Ethan. I'll go change." She grabbed the hem of her dress with her hand. She walked slowly and steadily this time. Everly stood at the door. She could guess what Olivia had said to Ethan from her red, and Everly knew Olivia was too proud to go through this ceremony with Ethan. "Eyes. Liv, I'm not here to talk you into going through with the wedding. I just want to take some photos with you." Olivia was taken aback. Smiling, Everly added, "You look pretty in that dress. I want to have some photos we can look back on." "Okay." Everly was afraid that Olivia would one day die from her illness. She didn't want Olivia to die without ever having a wedding. The last time Olivia wore a wedding dress was for the wedding album. Only Ethan and her were present, along with the staff members. Everly wasn't there. Everly wanted to record all of Olivia's best moments so that even if Olivia passed, she would still have something to remember her by. Olivia kept the wedding dress on because of Everly's request. "Hold on." Ethan picked up the veil, walked next to Olivia, and leaned over slightly to put it on for her. Jorge quickly started to take photos. He took plenty of photos of Everly and Olivia. Henry smiled and said, "Since we're already here, can we still take a photo together even if the wedding's off?" Olivia didn't have the heart to refuse such a simple request, so she agreed to a group photo. Brian pulled Ethan next to Olivia, and Jorge began to adjust their positions. "That's right, that's the way. Smile, Miss Fordham. I'll count to 3. Olivia felt uneasy but couldn't go against everyone's wishes, so they took one photo after another. The wedding was off, but not completely. It was like half the proceedings were already done. The friends gathered together for the day and left after the sun had set. Ethan said, "I'll get someone to bring you home. You're going to see Leia." "Yeah, I'll go with you. I have something to ask her." Chapter 492. Ethan saw that Olivia was determined, so he didn't refuse. "It's a little far away. You can rest in the car." Olivia said stiffly, "No need. I'm not tired." She nodded off after 10 minutes, and her head was tapping on the car window. Ethan looked at her sheepishly. He wouldn't bite. She didn't have to lean against the window. Reaching out, he pulled her over to him. Olivia opened her eyes and saw what he was doing. She tried to struggle but was too sleepy to do so and quickly fell asleep in his embrace. Her body craved sleep during this period of time, so she slept through the entire journey. Ethan looked at her quietly. It had been a long time since he could sit quietly with Olivia. The past couple of years had been chaotic. He hoped that the time would pass slower. The car drove up a hill, and the sky was completely dark. Olivia began to wake up. She realized that she was in Ethan's arms and quickly moved away. Ethan sighed sheepishly. Olivia's voice was a little hoarse as she just woke up. She asked, "When will we arrive?" "In a few minutes. We're almost there." The car fell into silence after that exchange. Ethan took out some cream puffs that he had prepared. "You must be hungry after the long ride. These were made in the afternoon. You should eat some." Olivia accepted the food without speaking. She didn't try to fight him. The most important thing was to fill her stomach. The car stopped at a resort after she finished eating a cream puff. It was in the depths of the mountain, and the environment was quiet. They could hear insects chirping when they got out of the car. There was also a stream nearby, and flowing water could be heard. It was a good place for rest and meditation. Olivia could tell that Ethan came here often. He brought her to a room without much trouble. He knocked on the door, but it didn't open. The attendant outside the door said, "Miss Miller said she had a headache and didn't want us to disturb her. She might be asleep. Let's go in." Olivia opened the door directly. She wanted to settle the score with Leia. The room was dark, and the window was open. The wind blew at the curtains, and there was a lump on the bed. Walking over, Olivia pulled away the blanket. But there were only 2 pillows on the bed, while Leia was nowhere to be found. "This is bad. She's escaped." Olivia ran toward the window and noticed a figure jumping directly from the 3rd floor drainage pipe. "Leia Miller!" Olivia yelled. Leia, who had gotten to the 1st floor, smiled at Olivia. "This isn't over yet, Olivia. It'll never be over until one of us is dead." Leia ran into the woods after she said that. A group of bodyguards were chasing after her. "Miss Miller, stop running." Olivia turned to look at Ethan. Leia, Ethan had already shot past her before she could complete her sentence. He was already over the wall when she came to her senses. He was running after Leia, following her trail. Ethan was very fast. He landed on the 1st floor in a few seconds. He ran after Leia without hesitation. Olivia stood in a daze as she watched Ethan disappear into the woods. Leia was his sister, after all. He would always place more importance on her. Olivia clutched her chest, wondering if she had siblings from her birth parents. Would she ever find them? Suddenly, a gunshot sounded nearby, and birds scattered in fright. Chapter 493. Olivia wondered what was happening in the woods. It was clear that this wasn't a random attempt. Leia had help. Olivia felt anxious, but she didn't make a move. She was pregnant, and it was safer to remain where she was. She wondered if Ethan had been shot. As Olivia was deep in thought, she heard another loud bang. A bullet pierced through the darkness and barely missed her face. The bullet was buried in the wardrobe behind her. Olivia froze with wide eyes, unable to move. She just had such a close encounter with death. Then, she noticed a man on a slope not that far away. His range of fire was limited because he wasn't armed with a sniper rifle. Olivia was able to make out the outline of the shooter's silhouette. He was wearing a mask. His figure was tall and slender. The eyes behind the mask met with Olivia's gaze. Olivia called out his name immediately. "Jack, is that you?" The man didn't respond. He gave her a good look before disappearing into the woods. Olivia was sure it had to be Jack, who had been gone for so long. They had lived on an island together for a while, so she was sure she wasn't mistaken. With his aim, he wouldn't have missed. So, the shot was to warn her of the dangers ahead. Olivia took a few steps back and quickly left the room. Upon spotting Brent, she promptly went to him. Brent dropped everything he was doing when he saw Olivia's pale expression and the sweat on her forehead. "What's wrong, Mrs. Miller?" "Someone is trying to kill me." Olivia placed a hand on her stomach. She would be dead if the man who shot at her wasn't Jack. It would seem like the primary objective of the other party was to bring Leia away. They didn't know Olivia would be there. Jack's bullet was a reminder to Olivia that she was being targeted. There was indeed something fishy with Jodie's death. It might be that Leia wasn't the only one who wanted her dead. Brent quickly began defensive maneuvers. He brought Olivia to a secure room and had people guarding it. "Send some people after Leia. She knows the truth about everything. We must find her as soon as possible." "Mrs. Miller, You don't have to worry. Mr. Miller won't let her get away. I want to see Leia's medical team. Brent shook his head and said, I don't think you should do that, Mrs. Miller. Someone from the inside must have helped Miss Miller, or she wouldn't have been able to escape. You mentioned that the enemy is hostile against you. You'll be in danger if the traitor is in the medical team. You're pregnant now. We have to make sure you're safe. Everything else can wait until after Mr. Miller returns. All right. Oliva sat on the couch, feeling uneasy. Her mind was in a mess. She didn't know who else would want her dead other than Leia. She had known for a long time that Jack's identity was extraordinary. Was he part of the organization that wanted to kill her? Olivia rubbed her stomach, wondering if she could give birth to her babies safely. The wind was howling, and gunshots could be heard occasionally. Ethan had rushed out without any preparations. Olivia wondered if the situation was under control. It felt like a century had passed before the door opened, and Ethan walked in. Olivia stood up instinctively and asked, Did you find her? It wasn't just about Jodie anymore. Olivia's life was also in danger. She got away. Did Toxic Hive take her away? Ethan shook his head and said, No. They were professional mercenaries. Chapter 494. That would mean Jack was a mercenary too. What about the weapons he stowed on the island? Brent quickly told Ethan about the danger Olivia was in. Ethan promptly approached her and asked, Are you hurt? Shaking her head, Olivia said, No. I hid after the first shot was fired. Their goal must have been to bring Leia away, so they didn't come after me. It's no longer safe here. Brent, move Olivia as soon as possible. Ethan was worried that the mercenaries might have rigged the resort. And if they were detonated, no one would have time to escape. Arrangements have been made. Let's go, Mrs. Miller. Olivia looked like she wanted to say something. I know what you want to talk about. I'll make time for it later. Liv, I can only tell you that these people are dangerous. If they're really after you, the situation will be dire. Ethan said seriously, but you don't have to worry. You're still safe for now. Their goal was to take Leia away. I'll arrange for another safe place for you to stay. Bring Liv back home, Brent. Olivia was about to leave when she saw that he had been hiding his hand behind his back. She looked down at the carpet and saw a blood stain. You're hurt. Looking away, Ethan said, It's no big deal. Olivia grabbed his hand and saw a deep cut on his palm that was bleeding profusely. Brent quickly said, Doctor. All right, it's not safe here. You should leave first, Ethan urged. Olivia looked at the wound and recalled the day when she was bleeding. She replied with a blank expression, Okay. Olivia realized she didn't have to concern herself with his injuries. They were no longer bound by any relationship. Oliva left firmly without even looking back. Calvin and Brent couldn't help but sigh. Back then, Olivia would be so restless if Ethan felt so much as a headache or got a mosquito bite. Needless to say, she would have freaked out if it was a huge cut like this. But now, she didn't even care to ask about it. Calvin looked at Ethan's hurt expression and said, Mr. Miller, Mrs. Miller really doesn't love you anymore. Ethan clenched his fists and said slowly, Take her away from here. Make sure she's safe. Calvin sighed and said, Understood. But what will you do for the wedding tomorrow? Proceed as planned. I'm not their target. Marina was already crippled, so she was an easy target. Since she was still alive, it meant that she no longer had any value. As for Ethan, Leia had hidden close to him for many years, but she never intended to hurt him. Everything that happened was related to the Fordham family. If there were any trouble, it was sure to be targeted at Jeff or Olivia. Ethan had hidden both of them well so that those people couldn't find Olivia. As things were, Ethan knew he needed to find a new hiding spot for Olivia. He couldn't allow Olivia and the babies to be exposed to danger. Ethan casually wrapped some gauze around his palm. Let's take a look at her room. Ethan took out the bullet that was shot into the wardrobe and said, Get someone to run tests on it. Yes, Mr. Miller. The room was largely the same as it was before Leia left. Other than the bed, everything was in order. Ethan sat on the bed. He had been trying to communicate with Leia for the past few days. He even talked about their childhood and promised to bring her to visit their mom after she got better. But no matter what he said, Leia didn't reciprocate. She treated him like he was invisible and rarely spoke up. Ethan was sure that Leia didn't become the way she was overnight. He wanted to get through to her slowly because she had been physically and mentally traumatized. He thought that the day she opened up to him would eventually come. He recalled how resolutely she left, and the words she said in her cold and hoarse voice, "Ethan, I can never go back anymore. Leave me. I don't want to hurt you. Just pretend that you never had a sister like me." Chapter 495. Olivia was flown back to the city by helicopter just to be safe. Jeff went up to her as soon as she got home. He wanted to know if she had made up with Ethan. How did it go with Ethan today? Faced with Jeff's concern, Olivia could only lie, "It went okay, Dad. I told you not to worry. We were together for the whole day." "That's good. I was scared that the conflict between you two would last. The babies are growing every day. They can pick up on your emotions. The family needs to stick together for the children to grow up healthily." Jeff brought Olivia to see his latest work with a smile. It was a gorgeous, handcrafted wooden crib. "Look at this. It took me several days to make this crib. I just finished it." There were cute animals carved on the four corners of the crib. It had also been polished and smoothed. It wouldn't hurt the babies' mouths even if they nibbled on the crib. There was even a crib mobile on it. The crib was very exquisite. It looked as good as anything sold in stores. "You're so skilled, Dad." Chuckling, Jeff said, "Although I'm just a nobody now, and I can't provide them with material stuff, I'll try my best to satisfy their spiritual needs. You're carrying two babies, so I made the crib extra large. It looks awesome. I'll thank their grandpa for them in advance." "Dad, I want to ask." Olivia thought about her birth parents at the mention of Grandpa. Chloe didn't pay her any attention, but did Jeff not notice his daughter had been swapped as well? Jeff dug through his box of stuff and took out several wooden toys. "Look at this rattle toy. I made two so that the babies could play with them together in the crib. Truth be told, I'd been in despair in the past 2 years. I wouldn't have been able to keep living with myself if you weren't there for me. Now that I'm over that, I'll help you take good care of your children when they're born." "Right, what did you want to talk to me about?" The words were at the tip of her tongue, but she decided not to bring it up. Maybe next time. They still had plenty of time. She could ask after Jeff recovered more. After all, Jeff didn't know that Chloe was already dead. It would be a huge shock to Jeff if he found out accidentally. "It's nothing." Olivia decided to swallow the words she was about to say. Jeff suddenly sighed and said, "It's all my fault. I lost the emerald pendants that were our family's heirloom. Or else, I could have given them to your children." A lot of the antiques Jeff owned were sold when the Fordhams became bankrupt. He didn't really care about the other stuff, but he could never forget about the 2 emerald pendants. "It's okay, Dad. I'll see if I can track them down and buy them back. Don't worry, everything will be better. It's getting late. You should rest." "That's right, a pregnant woman like you shouldn't stay up late. I was just being emotional. I'll go to sleep after I finish working on this." Olivia felt like her putting up with the situation at hand was worth it when she saw Jeff's smile. Nothing was more important than family. "All right, but don't tire yourself out." Olivia got up and was about to leave when Jeff suddenly stood up. He had recalled something. "Wait, Olivia." Jeff took a lucky charm out from under his bed. He said, "Mona's mother made this. Keep it on you. It might bring you some luck." "Dad, you know I don't believe in things like that." "I know you don't, but I do. I'm willing to be superstitious as long as my daughter stays safe. It's just for peace of mind. You can put it in your phone case. It doesn't take up space." Olivia looked at the lucky charm filled with her father's love. She didn't refuse anymore. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll be safe. You should rest. Don't tire yourself out in the first 3 months." "Okay. Yes, Dad." Olivia talked for a little more before going back to her room. What happened today kept Olivia awake. She thought about the man who shot at her and wondered who wanted her dead. She tossed and turned in bed, but sleep didn't come to her. She took her phone and looked at the news. It was all about Ethan's wedding tomorrow. Olivia felt irritated. She could imagine how excited Marina must be. Was Marina as excited as she was back then? Would she stay up the whole night? As she was thinking about that, someone entered her room. Sitting up, Olivia looked at the man, whom the moonlight shone on. She asked in an annoyed tone, "Why are you here again?" Chapter 496. Marina was indeed awake. It wasn't because she was excited, but instead, it was because she was outraged. Her people discovered that Ethan drove to a villa not long ago. It wasn't Miller property, but it was heavily guarded. It was obvious that Olivia was there. Her husband went to his ex-wife's home the night before their wedding. Marina couldn't hold back anger anymore. She decided that Olivia had crossed the line, so she was prepared to get back at her. Ethan didn't leave Olivia's room. Even if Olivia hated his guts, he stubbornly sat by her bedside for the entire night. The moonlight shone on him and made him glow. Olivia could see his bandaged hand in the dim light, but she didn't ask about it. In the end, she could no longer fight the drowsiness and fell asleep. Ethan lay down next to her, fully dressed. He thought about everything he had gone through with Olivia. He didn't know what went wrong and caused them to drift apart. Even if their relationship was on thin ice, Ethan still couldn't bring himself to cut ties completely. The sun rose. Ethan looked at Olivia, who was still sleeping. He kissed her gently on the forehead before leaving. The rising sun brought about a new day. Everything was basked in the warm morning sun. Those in slumber slowly began to wake. A person's arrival broke the peace of the manor. "You've got the wrong place. There's no one with the last name Fordham here," the security guard said sternly. Ethan had specifically said that no outsiders were allowed into the house. Even though the man was dressed nicely, the security guards wouldn't be able to bear the consequences if something happened. To Olivia, the man in the suit wore an easygoing smile. He said, "I'm friends with Miss Fordham. I'm here to give her an invitation. I don't care who you were friends with. Get lost. I said there's no one here with that name. I know Miss Fordham is here. It's a happy occasion for my employer today. She'd be sad if her old friend, Miss Fordham, couldn't attend. Can you please help me out and let me see Miss Fordham? At least let me ask if she wants to go. Get lost before I kick you out." As the security guard was yelling, Jeff, who was tending to the garden, walked over. "Who's your employer, and what's the occasion?" The man didn't know who Jeff was, but he quickly took out the invitation when he saw a chance. "This is the wedding invitation that my employer has prepared specifically for Miss Fordham. She really wishes that Miss Fordham could attend. All right, you can go now. I'll hand it to her." "Thanks." Jeff took the invitation and went back to trimming the bushes. After some trimming, he reckoned that Olivia would be awake. So, he washed his hands and took the invitation out. He looked at it and thought that maybe attending a wedding might cheer Olivia up. Jeff wondered which of Olivia's friends were getting married. He succumbed to his curiosity and opened the invitation. His face paled, and he dropped the glass of milk he was holding when he saw the names. The groom was Ethan Miller, and the bride was Marina Carlton. Jeff was dumbstruck, and his mind blanked out. He couldn't believe he saw Ethan's name. He thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. Ethan was Olivia's husband. They had 2 children together. How could he be marrying another woman? Jeff's hands were shaking, and the blood was rushing to his brain. He wondered if it could be a prank. Olivia was pregnant and couldn't take such a blow. He memorized the hotel's address, tore up the invitation, and threw the pieces away. "What are you doing, Mr. Fordham?" Mona's voice came from behind. Chapter 497. Jeff put on a straight face as he was racking his brain for an explanation. "I was trimming some bushes. I'm just throwing away some trash," Jeff said as he threw a bunch of branches into the trash can, which covered up the pieces of the invitation. "Mr. Fordham, you can leave the manual labor to us. It's okay. The exercise helps with my recovery." "Is Olivia up yet?" "No, Miss Fordham has been sleeping more recently. Sometimes, she sleeps until 11 a.m. Jeff thought about something and then said, "Sleeping more is good. By the way, I suddenly remembered that an old friend of mine is celebrating his birthday today. Can you lend me your phone? I want to make a call. Mona was an innocent woman. She didn't think about it too much and handed him her phone. Here, Mr. Fordham. Jeff dialed a number and walked to a corner. Mona saw that he wanted some privacy, so she also moved away. But she'd raise her head to look at Jeff occasionally. Ethan had given specific orders to keep Jeff away from all outside information. Mona figured that it wasn't a big deal to let him make a call to a friend. She didn't notice Jeff's expression gradually growing more upset. He handed her the phone back after 2 minutes. I'll be heading back inside for breakfast. All right, Mr. Fordham. Jeff didn't go back into the house. He went to the garage resolutely. He was aware that the driver would go to the market to restock supplies at this hour every day. Jeff hid himself in the back seat while the driver wasn't paying attention. He finally understood why Olivia and Ethan didn't allow him to use a phone. They didn't want him to find out about the wedding online. No wonder his poor daughter had become depressed and smiled less. It wasn't even a minor problem between them. Ethan had fallen for another woman. Jeff held back his anger. Only one thing was going through his head: he needed to get justice for his daughter. He didn't want Ethan to find out where he was going. Or else, he wouldn't even be able to leave the house. Everything went smoothly. They arrived at the market, and the driver went off to purchase supplies. Jeff took this chance to get away. There was already someone waiting for Jeff at the intersection. It was Wallace in his suit and tie. Wallace went to study abroad after the Fordham family went bankrupt. He had just returned to the country and came as soon as possible when Jeff called him. Nice to see you again, Mr. Fordham. It's been a long time, Wallace. I'm happy to see that you've been recovering well. Jeff wasn't in the mood for pleasantries. He got into the car and asked Wallace to bring him to the hotel. Wallace had a serious expression as he said, Mr. Fordham, the marriage between Mr. Miller and Miss Carlton was decided 6 months ago. You going there now might not change anything. Wallace, you'll understand when you have kids. Even if it's an impossible task, you'll want to get justice for your child at all costs if they were bullied. Jeff held his hands, which were shaking in anger. As a parent, I'm my child's last line of defense. If I were to compromise and allow her to be bullied, I'd be a failure of a father. Jeff felt bad for Olivia when he pictured what she had been through. He couldn't even imagine how hard her life was. Olivia was his little princess. He would never make her feel sad, and he would not let anyone else hurt her. Ever since Jeff woke up, he felt that Olivia had become more reserved, and she had become more mature. Pain was the reason why people matured. Jeff started to wonder what had happened to Olivia while he was unconscious and how she got through it alone. The thought of her suffering pained Jeff. He had to ask Ethan in person why he would treat Olivia like that. Before he knew it, the car had arrived at the hotel. It was still early, but luxury cars were coming and going at the hotel. There was a huge poster that featured Ethan and Marina. The wedding was real, not just a prank. The man who promised to care for Olivia for the rest of her life was marrying another woman while Olivia was pregnant. Chapter 498. Jeff's thoughts drifted back to a few years ago. He was satisfied with Ethan as a son-in-law, but he got angry when Ethan said he wasn't planning to have a wedding. Olivia was his only daughter. He didn't want to hand her over without being promised a grand event. But Olivia begged Jeff repeatedly for his blessing. She told him that Ethan was the best man she had ever seen and that he would never make her sad. She also said she didn't need a ceremony as long as they loved each other. Jeff knew he missed his chance at love, but he wanted Olivia to be happy, so he relented. He didn't expect his daughter to end up without a rightful status. No one even knew that Olivia was Ethan's wife. It was so absurd. And now that Ethan was marrying another woman, he was announcing it to the world. Jeff felt bad for Olivia. She gave Ethan everything she had, but she ended up with nothing. She even lost function in one of her hands. Ethan claimed to have put them in the manor so they could recover, but he was just keeping them prisoner. The more Jeff thought about it, the angrier he got. Mr. Fordham, this wedding is a sealed deal. We should just go back, Wallace said sincerely. Jeff had already gotten out of the car. Wallace, I'm grateful that you brought me here. You should go. I won't do anything. I just want an explanation. Wallace felt anxious, but he had a new job. He looked at his watch and saw that it was getting late. He needed to go. He tried to call Olivia's old phone number, but it didn't go through. He had no choice but to sigh and leave. Jeff stood in the busy lobby, feeling like he was in a different world. 2 years passed very quickly. Jeff came back to his senses and realized he hadn't been to such a place in a long time. Most of Ethan's relatives were overseas, so not many showed up. Most of the guests at the wedding were related to the Carltons. Jeff knew that Marina was Chris' daughter. He could only lament at the wretched fate that connected the Fordhams with the Carltons. He hadn't seen Chloe in a long time and wondered if she was doing fine. He figured she would show up at such an occasion. Jeff looked down at his attire. He was wearing relatively casual clothes because he was trimming bushes in the yard earlier. The black shoes he was wearing were also caked in dirt. His attire was out of place in a classy banquet like this. After all, he was bankrupt. Chloe would probably feel relieved that she left him before it was too late. The most important thing was to find Ethan and ask him what was going on. He wanted to know how Ethan truly felt about Olivia. So, he walked in. Olivia woke up earlier than usual. The sun shone into her room, and she slowly woke up. Ethan was long gone. She didn't know when he left. She looked at the empty bed and the dust swirling in the air. The room was eerily silent. Then, she remembered that it was Ethan's wedding today. She ignored the disappointment she felt and got up to go to the bathroom. She brushed her teeth and washed up. Looking in the mirror, she saw that her chin wasn't as pointed as it used to be. She told herself that her relationship with Ethan was in the past. Whether he got married or had a child, it had nothing to do with her. Without him, the sky would still be clear and the flowers would still bloom. Her days would be happier too. Olivia saw Mona carrying a bunch of flowers from the yard when she came out of the bathroom. Mona smiled and said warmly, "Good morning, Olivia." "Morning." Olivia subconsciously looked at the yard. Jeff would usually be tending to the plants at this hour. He moved slower, so he needed more time. "Have you seen my dad? Mr. Fordham came back in some time ago. Weirdly, he isn't out yet. Wait here, Olivia. I'll go." "Look." Mona put the flowers in a vase and went to Jeff's room. Olivia looked at the bright flowers and started to feel uneasy. "Oh no, Olivia. Mr. Fordham has gone missing." Olivia felt her head throb. "Missing? What do you mean missing?" Chapter 499. Mona recounted what had happened in the morning. "Now that I think about it, Mr. Fordham looked like he was pretending to be calm. I thought I saw him tearing something before I walked up to him." Mona began to pour out the contents of the trash bin without caring if she got dirty. The bright red invitation was very eye-catching. "What is that?" Mona frantically reassembled the invitation and said, "This is bad. Mr. Fordham has seen the invitation." "That's right, he also borrowed by phone before he told me he'd be going back into the house." "Would he already be at the hotel?" Olivia's face paled as she asked, "When did this happen?" 30 minutes ago. "This is a disaster. Get the car ready. I have to stop Dad." For more than 2 years, Jeff was cut off from the outside world. He was completely unaware of what had happened. If he were to learn about Chloe's death and Ethan's betrayal, given his current situation, he would surely be unable to accept these facts. Olivia tried to call Ethan immediately but no one picked up. He was probably busy with the wedding. She tried Brent's number but got the same results. Olivia was losing her mind. She didn't expect Marina to pull such a prank like this on her wedding day. She thought Marina was out of her mind. Mona said apologetically, "I'm sorry, Olivia. I wasn't paying enough attention. If I had noticed earlier, I wouldn't have let him leave. If anything happens to him, I don't know how I could possibly atone. This isn't your fault." Even Jeff didn't know everything about her relationship with Ethan, much less Mona. Mona held Olivia's hand. Her palm was covered in sweat. "You have to calm down. Don't forget the babies you're carrying. You can't be too emotional. Remember what the doctors said." "Okay, I'll calm down," Olivia said as she took a sip of warm water. But her heart was still beating fast. She had an ominous feeling, and her sixth sense was usually accurate. Olivia prayed inwardly for her father to be fine. Drive faster, even faster. There's no time. The driver was in a difficult position. Mrs. Miller, it's not that I don't want to drive faster. I'm already at the speed limit. There are also a lot of huge curves on this route. Mr. Miller had specifically instructed that your health must take precedence. Olivia didn't rest for a moment. She kept making calls, but no one picked up. She forgot how many calls she made, but finally, she heard Ethan's voice. He said, "Liv." Ethan was surprised. Olivia had called him a lot of times. "Have you seen my dad?" "Dad? Where is he?" Olivia relaxed slightly. This meant that Jeff hadn't found Ethan yet. "Marina sent someone to give me an invitation this morning. My father happened to see it, and he's no longer in the villa. He might be headed to the wedding venue. You know how it is. My father can't handle any surprises." "I got it. Don't worry, Liv. I had something to take care of, and I'll be at the wedding venue soon. I have people look for Dad now. It'll be fine." Frowning, Olivia said in a panicked voice, "Ethan, I have no family left. I only have my father. Nothing can happen to him. Don't be afraid. It'll be fine. I'll let you know as soon as I hear anything." Olivia wasn't able to calm down despite Ethan's promises. She looked at the time on her phone. She would be arriving at the hotel in 5 minutes. Soon. Chapter 500. Jeff walked around the venue a few times but didn't see Ethan. Not only that, he didn't see Chris or Chloe either. He knew that Marina was Chris' only child. He wondered why the parents weren't present for her wedding. He did see Otto, who looked older and depressed. Jeff felt tired after walking around the venue a few times. He wanted to find a spot to rest when he heard a woman taking near him. "Marina, do you think Olivia will come?" The mention of Olivia's name attracted Jeff's attention. He looked toward the people who were talking and saw Marina sitting in her wheelchair in a wedding dress. She looked exactly like the woman on the poster outside the hotel. Jeff realized that she was the woman Ethan was going to marry. He was surprised to see her in a wheelchair. Jeff had thought of plenty of names to call the woman who stole his daughter's husband. But his anger subsided a little when he saw that Marina was crippled. He began to think that there might be more to the story. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. Jeff didn't plan to confront a young lady. He wanted to wait for Ethan to give him an explanation. Marina's complexion worsened visibly. She gritted her teeth at the mention of Olivia's name. "Nothing will change with or without her here. I'll be the rightful Mrs. Miller from today onward." That's true. Olivia as Mrs. Miller is ancient history now. Callista had learned her lesson. She no longer dared to speak ill of Olivia around Marina. Marina's temperament changed drastically after the death of her parents. She gripped the armrests of her wheelchair and said with a contorted expression, "That bitch is still trying to seduce Ethan after their divorce. I won't let her off easy. Marina, no matter what she tries to pull, you're the one Mr. Miller is marrying. You've won. All you need to do now is to rest and get well soon. Your parents will be able to rest in peace knowing you're in good health." Jeff wanted to speak up and reprimand Marina, but then he heard Callista talking about her parents resting in peace. It instantly grabbed his attention. "What did you say?" Callista and Marina turned to see the person standing behind them. Jeff wore plain clothes, looking like a normal middle-aged man. Marina had never seen Jeff before. She didn't know who he was. He also looked way slimmer than he used to be. Even Callista, who had seen him before, didn't recognize him even though she thought he looked familiar. Callista saw his dirty shoes and thought he was an attendant whom they had met before. "Who are you?" Jeff was very emotional, and even his voice trembled slightly. "What did you say happened to her parents? Who do you work for? How can you say something so rude?" Callista glared at Jeff as she spoke. It was public knowledge that Chloe died from leukemia and that Chris committed suicide to follow her in death. Asking about that before Marina was like pouring salt on her wound. Jeff quickly approached Marina. She looked at this slim, middle-aged man. His stride was weird. It was different from how people usually walked. For some reason, Marina felt an inexplicable sense of affection for this man. Jeff walked up to her and asked with a serious expression, "What happened to your mom?" Tears welled up in Marina at the mention of Chloe. "What does that have to do with you? How did you sneak in? Where's security? Why did they let someone like this in? Get away from me." Jeff didn't let up. He looked at Callista and asked, "What did you mean they could rest in peace? What do you think I meant? Are you playing dumb, or are you trying to start something? Mrs. Carlton passed away 2 months ago. Why are you asking these questions now?"